US Vice President J.D. Vance announced on Wednesday that his trip to Greenland this week will be confined to a US military base and that he and his wife will not attend a popular dog sled race as originally scheduled. Danish Prime Minister Matt Qvortrup had called the planned visit to the race part of unacceptable pressure by the White House on Greenland, which Donald Trump has vowed to annex. Her Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen welcomed the move to revise the plans, calling it a de-escalation. Under a 1951 agreement, US officials are free to visit the Pituffik space base without an official invitation. Here's Trump speaking yesterday.
We need Greenland for national security and international security. So I think we'll go as far as we have to go. We need Greenland, and the world needs us to have Greenland.
And for more on this, I can bring in Matt Qvortrup, who is a senior research fellow at the Centre for European Studies at the Australian National University. Good morning, Matt, and thank you for joining us. J.D. Vance made a very public announcement of this trip on Tuesday, and he rather quickly scaled it back to just visiting the US Pituffik space base. So it seems he got a bit of a rap on the knuckles. Is this a humiliating climb down for the US Vice President?
I think it's diverting attention away from the story you had before. But it is adding insult to injury. This is not just undiplomatic or against common decency. Also, Pituffik is the place where in 1968 an American bomber crashed with nuclear bombs on board, which exploded. One of those bombs is still there. Means that the local population are not able to fish or hunt there. Lots of people were forcibly removed. So the agreement to have the Pituffik base, or Thule base as it used to be called, was taken by the Danish ambassador back then without involving the population of Greenland, was a colony at the time. So to go to that place, a place that has been literally nuclear contaminated by the Americans, really explains why more than, close to 90% of all Greenlandic people or Inuits do not want to be part of America. What is also, if you like, insulting is that the Danes have sent 90 police officers from Copenhagen up to protect this, which of course is of the Danish taxpayers' money to pay for this uninvited visitor. Yes, the Danish government is trying to de-escalate this, but the fact that Trump is saying it must be ours is sort of rather reminiscent of what Saddam Hussein said about Kuwait in 1990, and it does, or indeed what other countries said about Austria in 1938, frankly. And we are really living in a time which is frankly unbelievable. When I've lived in Canada, I've lived in Denmark, and the fact that that's two good countries I have lived in are now threatened by a so-called ally is rather shocking.
Now, there has been, as you say, this escalating rhetoric. We even saw in the week of Donald Trump's inauguration, his son, Donald Trump Jr., visiting Greenland in what seemed like a direct taunt to both Greenland and Denmark. Vance's visit elevates it to semi-official level, albeit without the need for an official invite. Is the Trump administration making serious moves here, or is it simply trolling of another nation state, however serious it might seem?
I think we should be prepared for the worst, which is a shocking thing that when Trump says yes, it must be American. This has technically been, in some ways, part of the Danish realm since 982. That is, it's getting, it's over 1,000 years, frankly. But that counts for nothing. I think the former Danish Prime Minister Anders Fogh Rasmussen said if it was just dealing with defense, the Americans already have a base there. If we're talking about critical minerals, of which there are quite a lot in Greenland, albeit under the glacier, that can also be negotiated. But if it's just for the Americans to literally expand territories and look big, then it's different. It is interesting to see when Vance put out his statement. He was talking about how Greenland has been threatened by many countries, and America is there to protect them. And one rather thinks back to other countries have talked about being protectors. So, in In 1940, Norway was protected by Germany, supposedly, and those sort of protection forces one should always be wary of. So I think we frankly and sadly have to expect the worst, and then especially going to Pacific is as I said. Probably worse than the Americans actually appreciate. It's still sort of under wraps, the whole story about the bomb the plane that crashed there. Technically, the Americans are not supposed to have nuclear weapons there, but they have been doing things in defiance of that. So also it comes at a time when there's now municipal elections this weekend in Greenland. There was, as you know, parliamentary elections for the devolved assembly there a few weeks ago. They're still in the process of forming a government. So we only have a caretaker government really at the moment. So I think one, frankly, has to prepare for what the Americans might do. There's a relatively small population in Greenland. It is a large territory, it's the size of Mexico. But for the Americans to physically invade, it would be very difficult for anybody, frankly, to do anything against it. I know the European Union is stepping up its efforts. Greenland, which is a thing that a lot of people don't know, it's part of Denmark in the same way as Scotland is part of the UK. But Greenland is not a member of the EU. Greenland actually in the early 1980s had a referendum on leaving the EU. So they are sort of trying to escalate talks to see if Greenland could rejoin the EU. And some people in Greenland, of course, want independence from Denmark, but under a sort of arrangement which is like an independent Scotland in a united Europe.
Thank you very much for that, Matt Qvortrup, Senior Research Fellow at the Centre of European Studies at Australian National University.